live. Thank you. I don't see us up there, but that's okay, right? We'll just assume we're live at this point. All right. I'd like to welcome everybody here to the Economic Development Committee, meeting number 1 for July 20th, 2023. Would you please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, everybody. Well, I want to thank everybody for volunteering for this. On top of your normal committee and department, recreation and conservation and groups that we're all in, it's a charge. I'll explain why it came to fruition in a moment. But before we do that, can we just go around the room and introduce everybody? Can we start? Why don't we start with? We'll start with you. We'll start over here. Yeah.
I'm Judy Brennan. I'm on the Recreation Commission. I'm here tonight in place of Peter Ames.
Welcome.
Kim Kleiner, Town Administrator.
I'm Kimberly Queenan. I'm the Selectman Rep.
Diane Plansky, Conservation Rep.
Jeremy Robitaille, Planning Board Rep.
And I'm Jerry Sorensen. I'm the Board of Adjustments Rep.
Well, welcome everybody. We appreciate everybody coming up to start for this. All right, so the question probably the public has is, why was this committee started? And you're asking yourself as you're sitting here, right? All right, why don't I explain why we're here, and then I'll review what the charge of the Board of Selectmen would like us to do in this committee. So I sit on the planning board as well. And we were reviewing a lot with impact fees because they're, 20, 30 years old at this point, maybe 20. And so as we were looking at all the groups, it became a question of who is really driving the economic development of the town, right? Should the planning board be making these decisions, or should we have a committee look at this? So we went back to the Board of Selectmen, and they thought it probably shouldn't be the planning board. It really should be a committee first, and then maybe go back there afterwards. So the map behind you of Litchfield at the moment is our current, I'll just give them a little quick update. Our current way that we look at zoning, as you know, in planning, is the northern part of the town and the southern part of the town are the commercial areas of the town. And in the middle is the residential. That model has served us for 20 years. I think it still served us well in some capacities, but we really have to start looking 20 years out at this point. So it's really starting as an impact fee question, and now it turned into more of an economic development question overall. So that's why we're here. All right, so the Board of Selectmen, before I start with the charge, can I just say, I want to ask the group, should we also invite a school board member to join here if we're looking at the town 20 years out? Do we think their input would be?
Why not?
I just want to make sure we do that before we, yeah. Does everyone agree?
Yeah,
A
I
school
know there's
board
been
member?
lots of discussions about influx of kids and this, and then there's also been a discussion of a lot of kids leaving the area due to cost of housing and things like, younger. So, yeah, I think having a pulse on how what the schools are looking like is important.
Yep, so they're part of the vision 20, 30 years out. We would absolutely want to include them. So can we ask the Board of Selectmen if they can look at this list? And now we do have a budget committee member that will join later. They just haven't met yet. I think they meet in a month maybe. When are they meeting? And then they'll pick a member to come here as well. Okay, so good. So the school board, we look forward to them joining and participating in the vision of Litchfield. All right, so the charge from the Board of Selectmen for this group, we'll put times to it later, but there were 5 items they wanted us to do. One was to create an economic survey and data collection model that will accurately reflect the feedback and desire of all townspeople. So that means all demographics, right, that we're going to try to get that from. So let's not talk about survey questions yet, but we do need a way to reach out to as many people as possible in the town, right, and get their input on what they want this town to look like 20 years, 30 years from now.
Yeah, I think that's important.
Absolutely.
You can't really start walking to the vision until you know what it is.
To what they want, right? Because we were elected or we serve, but we're here to do what they want, right?
Right.
We're here to serve them. So, all right. And also, it's not just the town. We have other members too, landowners, bank. All members have to be represented. All right. To establish recommendations to the planning board and the Board of Selectmen on updated changes to Chapter 6 of the Economic Development Master Plan chapter. So if you go to the town website and go to the planning board, and then you scroll down there, halfway through, you're gonna see the master plan chapters. We have currently 9 posted. If you look at the economic development chapter, was written in 2002. So we're a little behind. But in 2002, again, look back at that board behind you. We had, that model came up to play for 2 reasons. One, you had that circumventual highway coming through in the southern part of town, right? So if you look to the right, on the border on the right, that's where the ramp was gonna come, right? In that part on the bottom that's kind of orange, right? So the ramp to the highway would be there, and the orange on the left, which is Wilson's Farm area, down in that area, that could have been a mall at some point before the bridge went over Merrimack River. So that's why the commercial development was on that side, down at the southern part. Up on the northern part, we had the airport was being expanded 20 years ago, so it made sense to also keep the northern commercial up there. So that's why we have the model we have today. So it's important when you read these master plan chapters, they're embedded in that model. And it still holds true today. Not the highway, not the circumventual highway, but the airport, right? And 102 is at the southern part on the bottom. So we may change it, we may not change it, we may do a hybrid, but I just want you to understand what the model is today that we've all been working with. All right, so I hate to give homework, but I think we need to read that old chapter if we can all just get together and get a current state where we are today. I will say, all these master plan chapters, I would look at transportation later, economic development, because they're all intertwined with the agricultural model that we have for the town, the residents in the middle, so we'll get into those later. A master plan only goes through a public hearing. It doesn't have a warrant article, but it does give the public time to chime in. So if we come up with surveys and people start responding and we come up with some scenarios for changes, we're gonna have to go back and change all of these chapters or make recommendations that will change later, and zoning later.
Does the Board of Selectmen have a timeline for us on this and when they want to see stuff come back, or is it kind of up in the air right now?
I didn't see a hard set deadline, but the impact fees, we've changed 3, but we really need to have a better way of coming up with the impact fees than we had. We've come up with, like I said, we've come up with 3 of the 6, but we really have to come up with a methodology that really reflects the future. If we're going to be charging fees for structures and infrastructure in the future, let's find out what that's going to be, right? All right. So my point is, when we get the survey done, well, first we have to figure out where we are. Then we have to figure out what the community wants. Then we have to go back and we have to clean up and get these in sync with it if warrant articles pass. That'll be another thing, getting warrant articles passed. If you look at some of these, even our zoning ordinances, they say what lots are what. This one's southern commercial industrial, that's northern commercial, so we'd have to look at all of that again. All right, so that's number 2. The third, unless I didn't know, advise the select board and other town boards on issues concerning any bylaws, policies, regulations, zoning that are consistent with maintaining the character of our community, consistent with the master plan and desires of the town people. So that's going to be a big task. Advocate, go ahead, yeah.
And they're not all going to be in agreement.
Absolutely.
It's going to be some sort of scar tissue as you put them all together.
Exactly, and there's going to be, everyone's going to have a different point of view. Yep, and it's not just a survey. We'll probably have forums, maybe not at the town hall, but at the schools or something, right? Where you come in for the day, and you might have interest groups that you might want to, maybe you're more interested in the community development center, maybe you're interested in pet shelter. I don't know. People are going to come in, and we want to hear their vision, and maybe they'll be energized to do something in the future with that. So anyway, data collecting will be a challenge. All right, advocate for state and federal grants, incentives, or improvement in regulations that help advance our town priorities. So once we come up with some priorities, maybe we can get some grants to help fund these, right? All right, make recommendations to streamlining any permitting, licensing, and other regulatory functions. And then so that's a lot for this committee,
Zoning, who is here from zoning?
Jerry.
Jerry, okay, because he said he was what? For
Well, zoning board of adjustment.
Zoning
I'm Board of Adjustments,
Okay,
yeah.
zoning,
So-
okay.
We come in when they want a variance from the current planning
Right,
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
I just sent you one. All right.
And we look at the zoning ordinances all the time on the planning board. That's the law, right? So
Right,
we have to,
right.
we have to follow that. So if we're gonna be making changes to these, we have to get everything. And even though we come up with some plans, then we're gonna probably have to run it by people to see if it's economically gonna work, right? So if we come up with 3 or 4 scenarios, yeah. Or maybe it's, one of the scenarios is do nothing. That could be one. We don't know, but you should at least explore
Status
that.
quo,
Right?
status quo is considered
Oh, yeah,
a
so.
viable option.
I think we're gonna, when you enter these surveys, you've done them enough. You have the closed-ended questions, yes, no, and ranges, but they have those open-ended questions, so you get a lot of information from those, right? They're tough to accumulate the data, but I think we're gonna have some good input, I'm sure, on that. Now, the people who did this plan 20 years ago are still here in town, so they're also a resource. But we know what drove a lot of the decisions, what was being forced on us by the state. Now, NRPC, everyone is familiar with Jay Mankara. He will also be joining these meetings. He is the National Regional Planning Commission. He's the director. He sits on our planning board as our circuit rider. He was also here 20 years ago when this all happened. So he's this good resource that he's here. And also, even though we're Litchfield, we see this pretty little town here, we do have regional impact. We have forces on us that we're gonna have to look at, right? Might be infrastructure, right? Other things are coming. And he'd be a good resource for that. And not saying we have to agree with the state, we can still do what we want, but at least we can, pick his brain on that. All right. So that was our charge. I'm sure things will, these 5 bullets are going to expand into more depth. All right, so discuss next steps for community outreach to the survey. I just don't think we're ready to make a survey yet because we have to figure out what we are today, right? Where are you today? And then identify who we want to go talk to, all the demographics, everybody, whether they're social media, non-social media, age groups, right? We got to go after everybody and try to think, if money was not an option, what would they want the town to be in 20 years? How expensive will it be to be here?
Well, to
Or
be
maybe it
honest
won't be
with you,
expensive.
I'm a registered architect by trade, and a lot of times I'm working with folks on projects, and I say, they always cut themselves off before they get to, I said, tell me what utopia looks like, and we may or may not get there, but at least we know what it looks like, and we know what our goals and objectives would be. And then we may come, if it's here, we may end up here, but at least we're going in the right direction. And so, yeah, that's
We
the
all
whole.
have our little window
Yeah.
too, like I'm looking from the conservation window, saying
Yeah, absolutely.
Right, right.
nothing.
Yeah, and the public will have theirs as well,
Yeah,
right?
there's.
Yeah. Yep, so it's kind of nice that we're all here.
And even if we come up with some 4 or 5 great ideas and say they get vetted and they're viable, it still has to pass a warrant article. The voters still have to agree to this, right? That's how zoning ordinances change. So, yeah, it's a big coordinated effort here.
So would the survey be it would be Litchfield residents, Litchfield property owners?
That's what we're going to discuss, what we want
Okay.
that to be. And maybe there's multiple surveys, right? Could be.
I think multiple is the way to go, because I know we've done a lot of surveys on social media, and we did other surveys for conservation. And I mean, sometimes you're getting 150 responses, and you're deciding things based on those 150 responses, and it's really wrong. We just have to figure out really how to
Yeah.
reach
Well-
so many more people.
I've always had it with
Yeah, on that.
Yeah.
with surveys. I've always said, if people are okay with everything, they don't. It's only the people that really have some sort of agenda are the ones that are really motivated to do these surveys. So you got to be. And you're right. When you get 150, you're like, well, this isn't really.
Does that represent
So
8,600 people, right?
The best part of putting a survey together is finding out some way to make it where people will actually take it.
Well, Kim Kleiner had an idea.
Yeah.
Do you want to explain what you were?
All right, Kim, you're up.
So, and kind of backing up in answer to your question, much larger community took us 2 years of outreach, a year of just administration going through the responses that we got and another year and a half to write a plan. So, as much as we'd like to think this is a short-term project, even in a community, I mean, that was a community of 90,000, even in a community of 8,500, it's gonna be a process to do it right. The problem that you have is, in any community, you have a group of individuals that follow the town, right? They're following what's happening, they're interested, it's part of their interests. So those are the 150 that you get just like that, right? It's going out and actively finding what might interest some of these other people that aren't watching the meetings, they're not involved. They probably come to register their car, hopefully. So having surveys at the car registration, having surveys in building in case they're coming to file a building permit, sending out, when we send out the listing of the warrants, the kind of election newsletter thing, giving information in there on the survey. Please take the survey, go here, take the survey, we need your feedback. Anywhere and anywhere people would go, having that survey. That's the hard part, is you've got to find where they are, because they're not coming to you.
Right. The biggest response we got was the first one we did on the WhatsApp page, for beautification. What do you want the town to look like? And we gave like 10 different projects that could be possibly part of the town. River access was number one on that. And so we ended up, that's how a lot of us that were on WhatsApp got politically active, is because we were trying to respond to the wants and needs of the community as we saw them. And a lot of us got involved in that river access project and started going to different meetings and got that to happen. So that was a large group. I forget how many, it was over 1,000, I think. I'd have to ask Jason Brennan, would know.
Yeah, I still think we need to reach maybe, I don't know how young you're looking. Are you looking 18 and up, old enough to vote, even if you aren't a property owner? Ways to reach those people are gonna be different than ways to reach a different age or demographic. And I think that has to be kept in mind too when we're looking at how can we do this? Where are we gonna find the younger group? Where
But
are we
you
gonna
did a
find
study-
those who may not drive as much?
You did a demographic study in rec, when you were trying to address what people needed recreationally in town, and you found out that our population is
Oh, we have
aging.
more people over the age of 50 in town than we do under 18, which is like 10 years ahead of what the national projection is, 10 years prior.
New Hampshire's older.
So that
That's
was
all these
point
boards have
that
done
Jay
interesting
brought up.
things.
So Jay Minkara, I spoke with him the other night. Jay's been through this process for many different communities. But one of the questions that he and I discussed was, as a group, what type of data would you like Jay's group, or our staff here to pull? So I did a report for the select board on assessments, when properties were created, because we were hearing, oh, there's been a lot of development in Litchfield in the past 10 years. Data doesn't prove that. Sorry, that data doesn't. And so we did that exercise of exactly how many properties came online during what year. We can provide that data to this group. We can provide data from the American Community Surveys, which would have information on what your population ages would be, where they work, what their income levels are. So the American Survey data is very, very useful. We can pull information from the last census. Family sizes, any different types of demographics that you may want. So we want you to think about that, because although I say we can pull this data really easily, it takes a little bit of time.
Yeah.
We just want.
Right. Well, I'm hopeful we're not reinventing the wheel.
Right.
I mean, that's kind of I think it's not new. We're not pioneers. And so, yeah, it's just a matter of knowing what data, what information is available. What other communities, I'm not saying we cheat, but maybe other communities that we are in touch with, they've recently kind of done similar things. And I think the biggest thing is not to just get in this room and try to figure it out. I think we just need, my initial thinking is that we're the ones that, you're right, we're out there gathering all this information and then just sort of consolidating it, putting it in some sort of decision-making type piece, rather than invent the data. I'm sure a lot of the data's out there.
Yeah. So to build on what Kim said and what you just said there is, I find in my day-to-day business, the carrot beats the stick hands down. So if we give someone a task, they're not going to do it. If we go to them and make it something that's worth them doing, like come to a Christmas tree lighting, come to a soccer tournament, come to basketball, come to a veterans thing, right? They'll be more apt to do said thing. And then if we give them pointed questions that other towns have already kind of done, to give them some direction and see where they go with that, right? Do we want to do this or that? Give them a couple of examples to build off of, and then give them some area to write in actual answers, and then we can kind of get some information that's kind of based in more of one line than just being all over the place, some giant broad spectrum of whatever,
Yeah, we need a mix.
We need a mix,
Because
but
you don't want to
give them, like you were saying there a minute ago,
guide them.
it's been done by other towns before.
Yeah, I
So
agree.
see what they have and kind of give some examples of this could be this or that, and, what would you like to see in this example?
You just have to be careful designing the survey not to guide them, to an answer
Correct,
you
but
want.
give them some kind of
Right,
example
right.
of what to go for,
Yeah.
this is what other towns have done, you guys choose,
And NRPC has some great example of survey questions. Wyndham did a very active study within the past 5 years. Plastow did one, I think, last year. Merrimack is constantly updating theirs. Bedford has done one because they were growing a lot commercially, and then that was part of what they saw that their community wanted. I'm not sure how far Wilton.
Yeah, Wilton's in process right now. Manchester may have something online that we could look at, but again,
We probably would
don't
want to
wanna-
look at towns more like us, like,
Yeah, we-
did Pelham do something,
Yeah.
did Hudson do
But it-
something that,
yeah.
that's
Oh, yeah,
more
we would still,
smaller.
I'm saying it still has to be our own.
We still have to
Right,
be
right,
on
but we
down.
can
But
look at
it's like-
communities that
it's
are like us.
We can build the loaf of bread, but we don't have to grow the wheat. We can still, there's ingredients out there that we can use. We're still gonna have to make it unique to
We want their voice.
us, yeah.
And later on, as we start to, look at the data.
I'd like to see us reach out.
The
to
stakeholders have to be involved too, banks, land owners, whatever.
I'd like to see us reach out to the over 55 communities. Most
Absolutely.
of them have little boards that we could maybe get their input.
Yep.
Pay a lot of taxes, don't really get a lot of services.
So
You know?
And the
they
younger
have,
families too, yeah.
generally they have community, and Fire did a wonderful job reaching out to all the 55 and over, during town meeting time. They generally have some type of community group
Yep.
where they go and they meet, and absolutely hit all those, we hit every fair, every event that was happening within those 2 years. We had a table there and we were talking to people that walked by. Every single, I think it was like the local church fair. We were there.
So the school could help there. If it went home with the students, again, I don't know if that's legal, but, the school, that could get the younger families, right? If it went home with them or on their site.
Well, I think we kind of briefly mentioned it, but there's some value in what the kids think too. I mean, it's not all the homeowners, the taxpayers, and everything. I mean, you know, I've been in like Spokane, Washington. They call it the brain drain because they were so focused on all of this, and all these kids are graduating college and just gone because there was. So again, that's all part of we determining what do we want to be, a retirement community, we want to do an active family, and it just sort of all kind of, you know, the pieces all kind of.
So the community feel, yeah. But
Yeah.
what businesses do we want here and where do we want them?
Right.
That's a big question, right?
I
Do
wish
we
Rick
want them?
Charbonneau was on this board.
That's,
would
he
be
may
a-
have been
he
in the
would be a
past, I don't
great-
remember, but that's the stakeholders
He
coming
would be
in.
a great, yeah, he'd be a great asset, because I know he has some pictures in his head of things that he
Yep,
thinks would be,
Absolutely.
that he wants to attach to building that
Yeah.
he's doing. That's just kind of like, wow, I didn't even think that would be something great to have,
Yeah.
but I bet I'd use it.
And you can go one step out
I agree.
from that, right? So, although you have the builders and the people who have active in Litchfield before, do we know who's on the outside of that looking at coming in, right? So as you have properties that may change over, believe me, it's not just people within Litchfield that are looking at Litchfield. You have development in the communities around you, and everybody's looking for land. Everyone's
Yeah, there's-
actively looking for land, and
They
if
should
they
keep their
think
hands
they
off my
can get
land.
it, we need to. So you have business development groups out there, so, you know, Hudson has one, Nashua has one, Manchester has their own version. They just opened a new economic development office. Finding these other community groups that have developers and talking to them, what are you hearing? Who's gonna be looking, and talking to our neighbors. So that's been something that just came up recently, is the town managers and administrators getting together and talking with like Hudson and Londonderry, Bedford and Merrimack, so that we can try to understand what might be coming down the road that we don't
Yeah.
know about.
The reality, why I'm glad you're here, she's from Nashua. You were doing government work over there. We sit between Manchester and Nashua. They're two very urban areas. We're going to change. How we want to make a change and what we want, we better decide now so we can put the
Right.
processes
I
in
mean-
place, right? That's why we need to
So
find
you're
out.
right.
After I'd been here a while, I go, what is Litchfield? Just the city you drive through to get to the other two cities?
We were
I mean,
landlocked for years,
You're like,
right?
huh? Yeah, but it's like, because everyone's like speeding through, and I go, well, you know, okay.
But I always look at it as, I like living here because I'm not in the city, but I can get anywhere very
Exactly.
quickly without living in.
Yeah.
How long have you lived here?
We
multiple
moved here
places.
August will be 5 years ago.
Okay.
Yeah, a lot of my clients, I put in houses in town here. It's all because we're central, kind of in the state,
Okay, yep.
but we're not a city. But you can get to Nashua, Manchester, Londonderry in 5 seconds, and
The airport.
that's kind of the review. That
I
they
mean,
all- they
that's
all
a
give
lot of
me.
people say, "Well, you're that close to the airport, and you don't." I say every once in a while on a Sunday, I'll hear an airplane,
Right.
but that's about it.
And the infrastructure around us is new. The highways are in good shape.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so again, I know we have the small town feel and look and community, and we are, but we are in between two urban areas. And if we need to put procedures in place now, so we're not reacting, right? We always get surprised on the planning board with what comes through, right? We want to be
Yeah.
ready for
Well,
it.
there's lots of that comes up over. I see it on the Board of Adjustments, and everyone just thinks if I throw an addition on, it's going to raise the property value, and I'm going to get all this tax money. And I'm like, until you get to a point where you've done so many bad things, nobody wants to live here. You know, I mean, so that's where there's an education process too of, hey, we didn't make up these zoning requirements for any particular. I mean, it wasn't just because we wanted to be mean and take 20 feet of your property. It's because there's a reason for this. And a lot of times I try to explain that in the Board of Adjustments, and people are like, well, I don't care, I just want my addition, or I don't care, I want my deck, or I want to put a shed here. I'm like,
And
Okay.
it will be important.
And I don't know how this plays into it or not, but somebody just mentioned, do the people want it to be more family oriented or more of a retirement community? So knowing what the demographic is now, or what's trending now, I think people just aren't leaving. Once their kids are gone, they like it here.
They're
Our
not
kids are
leaving.
out of the house. They've been out of the
Still
house for quite a
staying,
few years.
Yep.
Ours
My
too.
small street, I think, I counted, and it goes into a cul-de-sac, 11 homes that their kids have all grown up and moved out, no longer at home, but we're all still there.
Right, we have like 4 kids in our
So,
little neck of the woods,
That's
and
kind
everybody
of
else
like,
is
when you're
staying.
looking at the population demographics, so if it comes back, we want to be more family-oriented, how does this group play into that? Do you say, oh, no more 2-bedroom condos, we want housing developments that are where families are more likely to move in? I mean, you can't tell someone who to sell their house to if they,
And a lot
Well,
of
there,
people.
there are some projects I've seen in
So
the
is that-
last
those
year
the
or so
types
that
of
the
things
low-income
that-
housing, you have to respond to low-income housing requirements for all communities. I see some of the developers kind of working at, and they were like, hey, this area was zoned off, but I can, so my experience is a personal one. My daughter and the 2 grandkids would love to live in Litchfield, and for 3 years, they've been running around trying to find a house, and before they even get there, it's already been sold or outbid. And so the families, they want to come, but, I admit it, when I was in my 20s, late 20s, I didn't have $800,000 or $600,000 to qualify for a house, and
But we do have condos coming in to meet some of that need.
Right,
And
I
we do
saw-
have
yeah.
apartments that are coming in on the other side of town.
yeah,
Both of those in those zoning areas that we already have.
yeah. And
That
I
are
recently-
reacting to that, so
They
they
are.
are out there.
they're there, but if you have a 2-bedroom, you're more likely to get someone probably without children, I think. If you have a 3-bedroom condo.
Which I think
Yeah.
the condos,
apartment, you're more likely to attract people with children.
But a lot of people here that are older that I speak with want to sell their big home.
What's
But
older?
I'm not gonna say, because I'm,
yeah, right?
but where do they go? So even if they made all this profit on their home, where are they gonna move
I
to?
always say, yeah.
That's why they're
everyone talks
staying,
about all this
right? Where am I
equity, and
supposed
go,
to
Not
go?
like North Carolina.
That's phony money.
Exactly.
You're gonna get it, and then you gotta go spend it to buy
Unless you
another.
go
why they're
way
But
up.
it's,
Depends how you do it, but
Litchfield's
yes.
an ideal location for something that's
It
a
is.
little farm community, because you don't have to travel forever to get to
But we've-
whatever you need.
So again, with the aging population, they might need rides to medical or rides to food.
Right.
That's the thing that we have to look at, right?
Yeah.
Not we, what do they want?
So, but if
And
the
that
survey
has
comes
come
back
up.
saying
That has
something
come up.
like,
That
well,
has
we
come
don't
up.
want
To
any
meet
more
the needs.
older, we want family-based, then the types of homes or what you allow built would change as a result.
Pretty diverse here in Litchfield. We have,
But
Yeah.
the
Prefabs,
selling
townhome.
point, when people say, oh, you live in Litchfield, it's a safe community right now. It's because it's not ultra urban and we don't have these dense developed areas and stuff. So, I mean, you look at why do people, it's safe. And so you can look
You
at different
looked at
demographics
COVID.
of people, but we want to maintain that sort of feeling too. I mean, it's that's fluff grabbing in the air, but still, it's
It's not though. I mean, with
Yeah.
COVID, people moved out of cities and places that were just like piled on top of each
Congested.
other as quickly as they could
Yeah.
because that's how things were. People were like, I gotta get out of the crowd. And they flooded areas like ours. And you're right, we're not gonna meet that need.
We also
Nor
don't
do we
have a
want
lot
to.
of land compared to other towns with 8,800 people. I think are we 11 square miles? And if you look
If that.
further, I
there's
think,
not a lot left.
where at one time was comparable to us, and it might still be maybe a little bit more people, but I think they've got something like 50 square, I mean, it's like they've got a lot more land to do, to
Right.
build and to develop than Litchfield is pretty small. Not
They've
just when
also
you just look
taken
at
all
not just
their
population, but
farms.
size.
They've taken all their farms and used them for that. We still have farmland, and I hope we're able to keep that. And I think a lot of people that live in our communities are hoping that we're able to keep that as well, because Hudson has developed all of their farmland, and now, they're Nashua North, is it really, what we don't wanna
People
be,
live in
you know?
Hudson. What's the population?
I don't know.
I should.
But I
know it.
want to bring up something about Merrimack, and I'm not
But
trying to.
Merrimack too is like 34,000 or more.
Yeah.
I
They're
mean,
over the,
they're
yeah.
like,
Yeah.
population's
Hudson's
3
over
to
the
4
10,000.
times our,
Right, but they did use,
Size.
they did use the farms, they used to be a big farming community, and they used all those farms to put all those houses and to put all
But
those
you
developments and all
control-
that business into.
To answer.
And I want to
Judy's
answer something about
question,
that
yeah.
after. Yep.
You need to place the regulations to control, so if they decide that single-family housing is the goal, you control that with your minimum lot size, you know, your curb cuts, your landscapes, all of your regulations.
And then you enforce it with the Board of Adjustments,
That's
that you
right.
don't just give it all
But-
away.
Right?
If you don't, right, and then people are going to try to come in and they're going to try to push
Exactly.
to get every square inch that they can, because land is the most valuable resource there is.
Yep.
There's other things that are gonna drive what you can and cannot do, and Litchfield has a number of them, and that's infrastructure challenges. So we've got water issues, we have no sewer, we have no gas really to speak of other than the tip, the northern tip. Sewer's a huge one when you start talking businesses. I mean, forget it. I mean, unless you've got a small warehouse or, you know, right there. Not having a sewer system impacts the lot size that you can have because you have to have a leach field, right? So,
Overall density goes
I
way
mean,
down.
all these things.
Jump in because I got to get back to two things that's happening here. Merrimack used to be like us. We were the same town at one point, right? So they have taken a lot of their commercial on the riverside and gotten variances, right? They were residential and now they're commercial. They're building, or the flip side, right? They're building lots of apartments going along that
Yes.
river. So their strategy has been forget the commercial, not forget it, but build more residential, right? So I'm just saying, these decisions are what the heart has to make.
Well-
Bedford made a decision to go commercial, right?
right.
Used to be a
Yeah.
very upbeat, rich-looking town. It still is, but I'm just saying, they bet their money and their farm on commercialism, right? So we have to have that discussion here. The NRPC had a meeting the other night from surrounding towns, and they were saying, if you invest in your water structure, now you're bringing the more homes, which brings in the more businesses, and you kind of grew, and you might not have wanted that, right? So these are a lot of discussions of how they're
Well,
all.
we had the comment
Integrated
earlier,
together.
it's, this is so
All
nice, cause I can live here, I don't have, and then I can get so
Yeah.
quickly to all these places too. So, again, that's all part of this, what do we wanna be?
Right.
Right.
And
And
then,
it doesn't hurt to ask, what kind of things do you want? Like, we have a gas station going in, the north end of town.
Yeah, right,
I think.
yeah.
Yeah, we have that, going in. What do people want or need? There's been a lot of talk about having, like that, another little restaurant in town, or having like a little restaurant, I mean like a breakfast restaurant. There's been talk about that, those kind of things. I mean, and I'm hoping that that we don't get too crazy with this economic development, and that we talk about things that we really can needs that we can meet, for things that people really do want. They wish they had a breakfast place where they could join their other groups of friends and meet there and things like that.
Well, there's some things we won't attract just because we don't have direct highway access. Like Merrimack, I don't know how many exits they have, but now you have the airport too that leads to it. So you can have bigger businesses, I think, when they're not driving through neighborhoods or with big trucks to get to where they're going, because
Right.
there's a number of highway exits, right along there. So
Yep.
that, what's feasible for a big business to come in here, we may not have just naturally in Litchfield. I can't see that that's what everybody would want.
Closer
But
to
you never
one
know.
or two.
You know,
102 could do it.
well,
Yeah.
yeah,
They could have the water line there, right? Wouldn't be much. for
Well,
civil-
yeah, that end of town.
They
So,
could do it down there.
I
In the
was
woods,
fort-
no one
yeah.
could see it, right? Could be in the woods.
I was fortunate enough to
Businesses
live
in
in a
there.
little city called Woodland Park, Colorado, when I was living in Colorado. It's right there at the base of Pikes Peak. It was a beautiful kind of mountain community just up from Colorado Springs, and it was beautiful. But they were so focused on this business. Well, this, I won't say it Mayberry, this sort of USA street got so overdeveloped, it just lost its character and
Yeah.
charm.
I don't wanna change too much.
So,
of it. Yeah.
again, it's.
But you can have economic development in people's homes. You can have, push that, right?
Right. I mean,
It's
but
another
so like I
option.
said, it is, I mean, I'm not saying you need a whole bag of pixie dust to figure it out, but it is a tricky sort of leveling sort of to take on.
It's like the old Route 3 that used to come up from Mass to New Hampshire. It had cute little bridges and,
Yeah.
you could tell the divots. Now it's this straight shot. Lost all its charm, right?
Yeah.
So just to bring up a town that's similar in size to us, even smaller, if you've ever been to Epping, New Hampshire, they have direct
Long,
highway
yeah, yep.
next there. They have 7,200 people, and they have Lowe's, they have Walmart, they have Market Basket, they have a whole shopping plaza with Kohl's, they have chain restaurants, yet they're smaller than us, but where they're located, very easy access right
Off the highway.
the highway there, where they don't have to drive through neighborhoods to get there.
Which isn't that what
So-
we did with our south and north, is that they're easier to access?
I think it's probably a good thing that the Charles Bancroft, the money he left to Litchfield to build a bridge through the center of Litchfield to Merrimack, is probably a very good thing that didn't happen. Because that could have changed things for this little town a lot quicker and
Yeah.
in a not so positive way. Well, I think according to people who like it the way it is.
Well, it's whoever you talk to. Well, I can't believe if I just had a bridge right here, I could get right over to the mall, that outlet mall. And I'm like, really?
It might take you 5 minutes longer, but we get to
Yeah.
keep the community,
Like,
you know?
really?
but-
That mall's that
But we
important to
are
you?
also looking at, like, Farmhouse at the Corner, just recently closed.
Yeah.
We've gone through the, Mills has managed to stay strong, but the Day of the Dead restaurant's the one that's been there the longest, and I can't remember how long.
Yeah, and
like
the
5 or
changes
6 or
over, yeah.
7
Could be a record for a
changeovers. The little Italian restaurant in that little strip just went out of business. So we're not really supporting a whole lot of economics in this town either, which is kind of an interesting thing to look at. I mean, we have a lot of people that are contractors that are working out of their homes, like you said, that are like roofers and people that are doing those kind of construction jobs, and they're in town and they work in town and they work out of town as well, but they don't necessarily have a storefront. It seems to be the type of economics that we really do have that are successful in moving in and out of town.
We had a Market Basket here once, didn't we? Where was the small tube? Was that?
Was that a grocery store?
Was that a grocery
I
store
think
at
it
one
might have
point?
been a grocery store. Does anybody remember?
Years and years.
Back
Is
in
it
the
a grocery
drive-in,
store?
back in the drive-in days?
What was the name of it? Don't remember. Well, yeah, we had a drive-in. That was immensely.
Oh,
That's not coming back.
really?
That was immensely successful from what I've heard. I moved in after.
Milford still has theirs, right?
Ours
Yes,
was a
there's
little,
the
ours was a little
non-adult drive-in,
different.
yes.
Ours was a little different.
Oh,
But the town didn't support a Market Basket here,
oh
right?
boy.
It was open.
That's not coming
Not
back.
the population it would have survived.
We're surrounded by so many, I don't know.
Exactly.
Yeah, there's so many. I mean, look at that
You can
place
go to
in
Hudson,
Londonderry.
Londonderry, Nashua in a minute.
There's our past planning
Londonderry,
board
there's
member.
a Shaw's, a Market Basket, and a Hannaford, all in like, and they're all thriving. They're all doing fine.
But it's choice. So southern New Hampshire is very small. Like, I live in Nashua, but my husband and I don't shop in Nashua. We drive right through Litchfield and we go to Londonderry, because it's just a nicer experience.
Right.
Right? It's very crowded in Nashua.
Yeah.
Um,
I don't go to
and we just
Nashua as
find
much as I used
the,
to.
the produce, it's different. It's, different produce, different products. But that's the nice thing about southern New Hampshire, is it's very easy to get to any community at any given time. I think the one thing we didn't talk about is that, as we were talking about how we draw people in, one of the things that the select board had discussed was bringing in experts to talk about issues that the decisions people make are going to affect. So, assessed values, taxes, things like that. If you draw in experts from the state and to talk about these issues, you might get people that actually want to come. I mean, people like to talk about how the taxes are affecting their livelihood. But the decisions that you make economically are going to draw and have effect on that in the future. So, because cost of doing business is not gonna stay stagnant. There's no chance in that happening. And your tax base is your tax base. So, and that's another thing that we can share is the difference between your commercial tax base and your residential tax base.
What about your rental tax base? Does that, I mean, how does that
Depends
play
if
in?
it's
I mean, because that's gonna be a
commercial.
big addition
Right,
without a
so
lot of impact.
you're generally larger than 3 to 5, depending on the community. 3 to 5 family gets commercial. It becomes commercial property. It's not a residential property.
Typically larger than
Tax
four.
wise.
Typically larger than 4.
Right.
So if Litchfield decides to stay mainly homes, we will hit a build out at some point. And as prices go up, our taxes will have to go up, right? That's why we have to look at maybe a business. We don't have infrastructure really for big businesses here yet,
And we'll be
unless
adding
102 does
kids
something,
to the school system.
right? Kids, the school
So
system's
right, for
definitely
every, you don't
impacted.
have any kids at home. I don't have any.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever we pay for taxes, whether someone lives in our house with or without kids, is gonna pay that
Right.
for taxes,
Right.
right?
Right,
Yeah, it's a
So
good
that-
point.
That would be even another good reason for someone on the school board to, because they'd be able to answer our questions, like,
I know that they've been trying to talk about the fact that the high school is at half capacity,
But-
right now, and that's continuing to go down, even with the projects that we have in place for new planning board and, projects that are out there and new ones that are just coming on the board. Those numbers are not really projected at this point to increase.
but if my neighborhood with 11 houses, with no kids, we all sold, and they're all three bedroom minimum, 2-car attached garage, and every house sold to someone with 1, 2, or 3 kids, so let's say
But is
even
that
1 or
gonna
2,
is
you know,
that
you're
gonna
adding 20
happen?
kids to the schools, if that does happen, right?
But you're having
that's
20
just-
kids graduate. It's,
Right.
See,
It's
But
very
I'm
hard
We
just
to
did
saying-
have, we had
kids.
the principals come in, the veterans group meets once a month over at the fire department, and then they came in, they gave us that briefing, because we were wanting to ask questions about all these things on the ballot, a new school or a Griffin and Memorial. And they explained that, like, yeah, that we're losing kids. And so obviously the question is, well, what do you need a new school for? Well, it wasn't the fact that I needed it for more kids, it's the fact that
Yeah.
the infrastructure of the schools we have now are failing, and so it's time to make an investment in the schools. So, yeah, I mean, again, just to reemphasize the point we started off with, yeah, I think that's important, because if you're looking at how the community is gonna grow, it's coming out of those schools, and if kids graduate and there's nowhere to go, and mom and dad stays home, that's great, but you're right, I mean,
What's the average age of launch from home now? 25,
At least probably.
26?
yeah,
Mine both right out of
I'd
college.
still live at home, but they threw me out.
I mean, I've got a 23-year-old.
Yeah, I mean, so that's something to consider too, is that these people they are staying in their
Well,
houses.
yeah.
Jeff Blackwell
They
said
don't
there
have
are quite
kids
a
in the
few
school,
asking
but they
for
still have kids at
permits
home,
for additions
which is really interesting
versus
too.
moving.
well, I would be that
$800,000
perfect example.
Yeah.
I live here in Litchfield. I have a large house that I don't need anymore because my 5 kids aren't anywhere, they're all more. But I have my daughter and 2 grandkids that would love to move here, and they're living with me now, and we've been looking for And they keep, they ended up at Callaway for a little bit, renting, and then they come. So it's just a matter of, I mean,
It's a desirable town.
yeah.
Well,
It-
if we do the new school stuff, whatever else, it'll drive it
Yeah.
more desirable. And then maybe when the demographics start to shift and, the age goes down, people move in, it'll make more sense. But if we don't do the schools and this and that, it's gonna lead to not wanting to grow as far as from the bottom up, right? It's a whole lot of stuff we gotta tie in together to kind of move
Well,
forward.
and you got an entire
enigma.
group of
It really
people
is.
that said, I don't have any kids in school, why am I paying taxes, I mean, there's this.
It was
that's
somebody
something
else
I
paid
feel-
for, somebody else paid when our kids were going.
Well,
Yeah,
and that's what
you
I
know,
always
yeah.
tell them, I said, well, who
Those
paid
people
when
have
your
been,
kid?
those people have been pretty darn good. I don't know how many things you've seen fail on the warrant articles that have gone through for the
don't.
schools. I think you would see those things have all passed pretty soundly by these people
No,
that
right.
people are saying are too old to pay.
But the
We're all
demographic
paying.
of the
We're all paying. We
family
aren't
unit
saying no.
has
Changed, it's changed.
I mean, people, just from economics, inflation, cost of living, the families of 5 children are much less now.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it's just not economical.
It almost sounds like we want to sustain what we have.
Well, that's not. We haven't even
It's not a
started
matter of
survey.
what we
I know.
want.
Yeah.
What
That's what
we
it sounded
want.
like.
It's
Even
a
started
matter
a
of what
survey.
we want.
That's
I'm
why I
not-
say it's
yes, but it
important.
sounds like sustainability of what the town is now. Not that it can't grow, but the lifestyle that's here is what I meant.
Most people are sad to see the farms go, I think.
We're
I
working
think-
on conservation really hard to keep those farmlands farmed so that Litchfield is the last agricultural corridor in the state, in the southern state. We are the last one.
Oh, yeah.
If we
Yeah, it
let
is.
that fall, it's a loss to not just Litchfield, but to the rest of the communities around it.
All those
So
master plan
we-
chapters
yeah.
like that.
We
Agriculture.
have absolutely, and you got SIP responses to that too, that people wanted this community
Yep.
to survive as a farming community. You actually, if you're gonna change things that much down that corridor, you're gonna have to make changes bigger than what you think. And that is to eliminate that corridor. And that's,
Well, it all comes down to what the survey says. If people
Yeah,
want more
right, yeah.
family-based housing, then you're gonna have to find ways to bring in something that's gonna help subsidize the taxes. Or if we stay similar to what we are, which I think is a pretty decent mix, then I guess you're gonna look at things differently, but we won't know till.
I think people tend to put agricultural over here and economic development over here.
they can exist together, look at a winery
Agricultural
coming
is
in.
an economic development,
It is.
so
But it
in
has different
itself.
zoning. It has different zoning. Like we can put an agricultural economic aspect into that corridor, that Charles Bancroft. And it doesn't scream out non-compliance with zoning because it's agricultural, has a different.
So one of the things we just looked at that was the farmer's market ordinance, right? Because the state has actually said that if you are following a farmer's market, you're not looking at the commercial code.
No.
You're looking at the agricultural code.
Exactly.
And the state's starting to do that more and more. UNH has done an awful lot of work on this. And if the town decides that that is the way that it wants to move forward, and they want the identity of Litchfield to be that, then there's other things that you can do through economic development to strengthen that identity.
Farm to table
Not
restaurants,
right,
those kind of
yeah.
economical things that go hand in hand with what the face of Litchfield actually looks like now. And then
And help
and
the farms.
enhances it and gives, so that if we are able to purchase a large piece of farmland that we can then turn over to somebody who's gonna farm it because they have a what do you call it, farm to table restaurant, then all of a sudden we're all getting everything we want. More economics in town,
Yeah.
more sustainability with the beautiful town that we live in. I mean, those are the kind of things I hope that our developed in this economic.
And studies have
Council.
shown people will drive, they will drive
Oh, yeah.
long distances to go to a farm to table restaurant. You know, and they will wait in long lines to, and sometimes you don't need sewer so much because they can be very rustic in form and people don't mind because that's the atmosphere.
Right, they
of
might
the
have
farm
a
to
waiting, they might have a waiting to get into their restaurant that's 3 weeks long, as
Yep.
opposed to you can go there any night.
Yeah.
That's what we hope that,
Any of those destination events, like Mel's, that they thrive because they're the only one in the area who does that.
yeah, we're
Yeah,
big
If
because
we
of
can
Mel.
drive, if we can drive more of that kind of development
Yeah,
to whatever it is,
Yeah.
agriculture, whatever it is, it could live in our town.
I loved the
Whereas,
idea of the farmer's market. I was all excited.
Chain things probably would not survive so well in Litchfield. You know, there's none grocery stores, 99, none of that stuff would really live in this town very long. It'd just be kind of, "Oh, okay, whatever, been there before."
If
You know?
it did, it wouldn't be.
Except for
cool.
Shorty's was here forever till they sold it, you know?
Right.
But you know what? They had to leave because they
Yeah.
couldn't. They had to leave because they were too small.
Yeah.
They could Shorties.
Shorties.
Oh my God! It was
Yeah.
like one of the
I thought you said something
originals.
else.
Here like forever.
We would finish baseball and
Oh,
we'd wait 2 hours to get
They were
into,
here.
and everybody would see each other. It was
Yeah.
really fun.
As a kid, that's what we did. We drove down, we'd go to the markets, when the farm stands, and then we'd go to Shorty's.
Shorty's,
That's how my dad got us
We
in the
miss the
car.
Wilson store. I mean, the town misses the Wilson
Well,
store.
people drive to Massachusetts to go.
They do. They will go to Lexington.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yep, to support them and still love them and still,
So,
still love
Should
Wilson's.
we talk to our existing businesses and get their input?
I think that's
Absolutely.
that's a forum all by itself, I think. Is
Well, and
having
how do
that
we
come in.
encourage those kind of agricultural businesses? How do we entice them to come into Litchfield and look around and talk to the,
we allow for the development of do kind of things. you
well, we
know,
do
so-
now.
I'm just saying, but
Yeah.
we push on it. So you mentioned the farm stand on the corner there and the Italian restaurant. That plaza, forgive me here, is a terrible location, terrible design. It's not usable for this modern day and age. But if we can go ahead and point development to do a modern style of that kind of plaza, it would probably thrive quite well. You see Day of the Dead tied into Mel's, they're doing great over there. They have more parking, it's very busy, it's very centrally located.
And Mills has.
Yeah,
really
they
Mills has
started
really
out
worked.
over there, and then Day of the
Correct.
Dead quickly moved and said, this
Exactly.
ain't working.
And now they're doing fantastic.
I
over there,
think
so.
how you look too, like going along with the local character.
Yeah.
Wanna-
And we can drive that through the planning and zoning board
That's
as
in
far as
chapter
how
eight.
things look.
I think that entices people
I think
too.
that's very
Chapter
important.
Where
eight
Mel's
as well
has
as
the big red
conservation
barn that they
in
have
that,
things in, and
So one other thing, I hate to give homework, but chapter 6 was the economic one, but if you read chapter 8, that's only 3 years old.
Is this
This was about
2002?
community. And it talked about what you just said, Judy, businesses that look more like they fit into a smaller community.
Yep.
If you go on 101 West out to Amherst, you have
Yeah.
the Black
Redesign is
Forest
chapter 9.
Cafe, you know, the Black Forest Cafe, or whatever.
Yeah.
And you keep going further, on the left, there's some of those smaller, offices. That could blend in well, right?
right.
So, but that chapter covers a lot of, I think, what we're talking about as well, but just, but it's not zoning ordinances, it's a,
Curb cuts are a
plan.
problem, though. I mean,
Yeah.
that poor gas station went through so much with state curb cuts.
Because only could have
issue.
one curb cut, yeah, it
That
went
was,
through
that
the,
was ridiculous.
so, and our only comment was, is the fire department okay with that? Because you got
Well, they
one
had
way
to-
in, one way
They
out.
had to change so much about it. It
Right.
was gonna be so much more over there that would have been good for the community, would have met a bunch of different needs. But because it was one curb cut instead of two, one in and one out, and that's something that Litchfield can do anything about.
Correct.
Right.
That was, that was
State.
really tough. That was state.
Yeah,
So-
the fact that it's a state road drives its own
So,
Yeah, it
challenges.
So-
curb
Just-
cuts have an issue.
but just to kind of, on that, the discussion about these destination thing, I did when I had the kids, living in Washington State and stuff, we would drive forever to go pick apples or do that stuff. And so I was curious and I said, wow, we live there now. Max Apple Farm's right over there.
Yep.
So last year I went over there and the big, and I'm looking at there and I'm like, Massachusetts. I mean, there ain't nobody from New Hampshire here, that they're all coming up. So I'm like, maybe
We
that's
just don't go on the weekend.
right. Well,
'cause
that's,
we
what
know.
I said. That's what I said, we'll go, I'll go. And so, you know, is that something where like, they come in, dump the money and get them out? I don't know, I mean, that's, you know.
We have strawberry picking in town at McQuestion's. We used to have blueberry picking.
I
It was
pick-
amazing.
Yeah, the blueberry place
Delicious,
went,
yeah.
I go, hey, this is great, and then I'm like, 2 years later, oh, another, what, going out of business? And everyone's
Well,
like buying
it's
up
a
all the.
that's a family farm, and
Yeah.
it's 3 family members that were running it, but they're.
You know, that's what I'm finding too. A lot of these family businesses, the kids don't want to do it. I know a lot of different, even like, D'Amico was in Massachusetts, a huge, and they shut it all down because none of the kids were interested.
The land's worth the money.
So there's a lot of that happen. These family businesses are drying up because,
It's hard.
And the farms are good, but they're not gonna hold your whole town up either.
No.
No,
Right.
but we have
Right.
other ways of drawing those people in. There are those communities. We have Alfred High School. That's training our foresters and our agriculturists
agree
and
with
things like that. But have we reached? That's another place to reach out to say, what do you see in Litchfield that you could make part of
Yeah,
that?
Kim was jumping on,
Like a
trying to
dentist's
build
office.
on to what you're saying.
Keep
Go
the
to the
agriculture,
market.
absolutely, but it's not, the money it brings in isn't gonna lift your whole town. You need other
Never.
businesses here as well. In the master plan chapters, everything's about farming community. If the town still wants that as its identity, right, that's great. But if they don't, we have a lot of changes to do. Because it's also residential as well. It's residential / agricultural.
a safe place to live. I think that's, when I talk with different, you know,
Yeah.
I love it here, I feel safe. I feel like if my kid's riding his bike in the driveway, I'm not stressed out if I have to go to the kitchen or things like that. So, in looking at development, you know, a lot of times this huge developments and these wonderful things and these great tax bases, they bring bad things with them.
But even that's going to change. So you have to make a conscious decision that you are going to protect that way of life. Because, you know, even recently we had an event, right? And the people that, well, they weren't from Litchfield.
Right.
You have Nashua and you have Manchester, and in between you have this nice little road down by the river that provides them easy access. So we need to look at how do we support our police force? How do we make sure we have the right number of officers properly trained to protect that way of life? Because that's going to be, I said, you can't put a bubble over Litchfield.
Right.
It doesn't work.
And ironically,
We wish it did.
that reminds me of what I'd been moved in 2 months, and I was making the comment and they go, "Don't get too comfortable." They still come down from Manchester, and I was okay, all right,
It's true. We have a thing where people are breaking into cars and
Yeah.
looting
Yeah.
cars and.
Yeah. It's,
You have to still remember that you are bordering. I mean, they come up from Lawrence, Massachusetts. We had a big
absolutely.
little crime wave that came up from Lawrence, Massachusetts, and they were stealing cars and it
Which is
happened.
ironic.
And they see it on the other side of Hudson, right?
I know.
Right.
I'm military, so I know it sounds like when I was living in San Antonio, we were living on the south side of town. It was the worst side of town ever. But then I realized all the folks down here are going to the north to steal everything. So we were nice and safe right here. I was right in the middle of them. And I go, no one's stealing out of my backyard because they're all headed to where all the nice houses are. So
Gotta remember to lock your doors.
But I think just reading all the chapters, and so we are all working on the same frame, and then
Yeah, I'll read it.
everybody going out and kind of doing some research with different communities and different economic plans that have been done in the past, just to give us an idea. And then we can
6
come
and
back and
Yeah.
kind of put together some type of plan on what it is that we want to see for.
There was a huge call at one point to change zoning, to make it bigger, that you had to have more land to build on. That was,
And that might be what they tell us.
yeah.
And it might be
that's been-
important to bring in Joan and Jeff, because every single day we have some type of conversation about someone that wants to do something and has some challenge, and so we should talk about that. What do the residents reach out for permits, and we're finding challenges that they can't do that the town is interested in making a change about. Some the town won't be interested, some we can't, but Jeff and Joan can certainly give some input into that, as well as Jay.
Should we try to discuss an actual meeting time to get on?
Yeah, let's do that.
Officially,
Can I
so
just,
we
but
make sure
before we
can
do
be-
that, can I just say that the chapters I think people should read, and the order's up to you, are 2, which is population and housing, because there was
This is all
projection.
part of the master plan.
Master plan, so you go to the planning board so you go to the town website, planning board, departments, planning board, scroll most of the way down the screen and you'll see master plans. So I would say 2, which is population and housing, because we looked at projections and how many more homes could be built with this current model, right? I would say number 6 is economic development, to see their strategy back then. I would do 9, community
gave us 8.
design.
You gave us 8 earlier. You want 8
8
still?
was land use, 9 is the community design.
Well, 9.
Okay,
So
9.
2, 6, 9, and maybe 5. I'll get into 5 in a second.
Yeah.
So 9 is the community design that was recent, and it looked at types of homes for the area, types of businesses, what they should look like, it was a suggestion, but it would keep the rural character, and still allow the economics. And the last one would be, if you have time, number 5, which is transportation, and people coming into town, leaving town, how they did work. COVID probably threw that upside down with people working from home, but it doesn't hurt to look at transportation as well. Yay, when you have
Well,
time.
by the amount of traffic I've been seeing lately, I think a lot of folks are going back to work too.
Yeah, it could
so.
be.
Somebody was
So,
saying
yeah,
people
pick your
don't
order,
really
but
home
I would
for 2
definitely read the
jobs,
economic
like,
development
working
just to
from
see
home.
They can,
our
yeah.
current state of where
It's
we
as
are,
soon as I've
right?
had and Google me, it's
And then go
easy
from
to-
there.
I was
Alright.
behind a tractor this
So
morning. and I
dates
thought
of
it was the
meetings,
neatest
once a
thing
month at
in
this
the whole wide world. I'm like,
See what, everybody meets on a different day, right?
Instead of saying,
Thursday,
you
let's
know,
do
to this
stuck
calendar.
in
Thursday.
traffic,
When you guys meet.
come in behind the
Right,
calendar.
cool.
It is.
First and
I'm
third.
gonna go to the town calendar to see what days are
Okay,
open,
yeah, yeah.
and then if
Yeah.
cable's
Give 'em time
available.
Yeah,
And make sure
Litchfield,
you
that
look at the
is.
school board then too.
Yeah, we have the school board as well, yeah.
So I think
His eyes just went zing. What?
well, he wouldn't mind this one, because this one's at night. A lot of the school board stuff is done during the day.
It
So
is?
it wouldn't be as hard. Well, yeah, because you gotta deal with teachers and
so.
works
Do
till
you want to be on a
certain-
committee with your husband?
I don't
Block
want
your
him.
ears. No.
I mean, I do want you.
I don't.
I know, sorry, no,
Don't say it publicly, I
We
don't.
have budget here too. We have budget as well, right? And school.
So budget is Thursday.
I didn't mean it that way.
Jay mentioned Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday
Work for him.
being easier for him.
Let's see.
The problem with Mondays is they're taken up. SIP has the 1st and the 3rd, and Selectmen have the 2nd and the 4th.
Okay, so Monday's out.
So Monday's kind of out.
Yep.
Tuesday
Yeah,
is
first.
rec, and when it's not rec, it's planning board. So that's out.
Right.
Wednesday is school board. Just school board.
And NRPC is monthly.
Does it have to be in here? Does it have to be
Doesn't-
televised?
Fire.
No,
Because
we
there's
could
fire,
do fire.
right? Fire
Yeah,
does.
we could do
Yeah.
the fires.
Whether they have cable or
then
not.
you
they're
could-
only
I do think we want to be publicized though, because I do think that we want people knowing we're talking about
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
But you can do that over at the fire department too.
Do they have staff for the cable?
We
check with
did
John.
some for conservation, because we got pushed
Yeah, we
there
did a
when,
couple Board of Adjustments over there.
because the budget committee, when they start really getting into the budgets, all of our meetings get pushed out, except for selectmen, I think.
Just have to check with John Brunel that they have staff for cable.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, we will.
Yep.
How many cameras? 2? And we had 3 meetings one day, right? And they were like, which one do we go to?
So are you every other week?
For which one? NRPC?
No, selectmen.
Every other
Second.
week on Monday.
Yeah, 2nd and the 4th.
Yeah. So then Tuesday's rec is
Rec is 2nd and 4th.
second and
And
fourth.
planning.
Planning's the other 2.
Monday, Tuesday are definitely dead in the water.
Yeah, yeah.
I think it's only Wednesdays that,
Jay can do it.
that, only have one meeting, which is school board. But if there's a school board rep on this committee, that's gonna be hard because what is it?
The 30th looks open, like the last Wednesday looks open. I have the NRPC Executive Committee and Jay is there.
Yes.
So that's mid-month.
So what about Thursdays?
It's like
Budget and
Conservation.
Conservation's once a
Conservation.
month though.
you're the first.
It's
And
mid-month.
Jay has
Standing one, he said, right?
Jay has a standing one the third.
Or something else.
Yeah, the third Thursday of every month.
Okay, so that was the open one. So Fridays are looking good.
Date night.
There's a reason why Fridays are open.
Or the last Wednesday.
Pete's got to step
of the
up for
month.
that one. Date night.
How does the last Wednesday of the month look? Looks open on August. Let me see.
Because
Last
it
Wednesday.
wouldn't have a school board meeting, you think?
I'm looking at the
I'm
calendar.
looking at
Oh, wait a
the-
minute, what's that? Oh, there is a school on that one.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
This is terrible.
I think
Yeah.
Very challenging.
It's crazy.
Oh, and the school board members also serve each on a couple of different ones. Budget.
Yeah,
That's
true.
facilities.
Yeah, school boards are on a bunch of
Um,
them.
So what is,
Are people working full-time, like you can't get out before 5, or I'm just, don't know.
I don't know what,
I
for Peter,
can-
he just said
Yeah, I
Monday,
don't-
Tuesday, or Wednesday works for him.
I can be somewhere at 4 o'clock. I don't know about anybody else. I mean, that's got to be hard. for-
Wednesday is probably better for me. Timing, I could do early if I had to, usually.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can make it work.
what about
that
you?
Wednesday is
I-
open
Yeah,
here.
as long as I know ahead of time, I can
The 26th,
figure stuff out.
right?
The nice thing about
last
working
Wednesday?
for
September, if you look at
government
September
is
27th,
I'm
school
doing
board's
community
there.
service, and so
Oh.
they're
They
really
like
like, yeah,
that.
go do that.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I just have to plan it, ahead of time. If I got a set date, it's easy.
During the day is fine with me.
I don't know,
Like a
people's
Kim light up
routines.
like a Christmas tree. That works for Kim. It works for me at like 4 o'clock usually. I can be places, especially in the winter.
I only see school board facilities
Which one, on the last?
on the last
Wednesday?
Wednesday
I
of
saw
every
school, I
month.
just assumed it was school board.
So school facilities is, I think they have one, I'm looking at your husband.
Peter,
Do they
the
have one
facilities?
every week, school facilities?
The last Wednesday?
Last Wednesday,
I thought
every
facilities met during the day.
3:30.
3:30 to,
So last
yeah,
Wednesday of the
3:30
month.
to 5:30. So we could do a 6 o'clock
Yeah.
on that Wednesday when they get out. You know, I always try to give a half an hour.
Yeah. So get some food and then we can eat.
I mean,
You can put together different ideas and just we
That
could
works.
I would say,
email back.
let's,
Okay.
I'll clear it. I'll run it by John and I'll run it, I'll even ask, Heidi, and just to confirm, you don't have anything that last Wednesday. And then we could, the bad part is, I shouldn't say this, but, when we did this, the last one that I was involved in, yeah, didn't stay away from Saturday mornings. I mean, forums and things like that, when you really need to start doing outreach to people, you're gonna have to hit some Saturdays.
I'll already be in most things, so I can handle
I
a
know,
lot of
right?
sports I can
A lot of those are things we attend.
Yeah,
I can
So-
pass on to other boards that I'm on to help out with this stuff too, at the sporting events.
Right, you don't have to have everybody at each event, right?
Nope.
You have
no, we
one or two.
shared,
Yeah, you
so.
can
I absolutely
we didn't kill
share.
people.
Yeah, okay.
There's no school board meeting on the last Wednesday.
That's the 30th.
you. Yeah, so
Sounds
I'll
safest
double
to me.
check with John and let's say the last Wednesday of every month.
Did you guys say 6?
Do we
or
wanna
6?
skip next Wednesday?
Yes. Yes, please.
Start in August,
We have too much reading. Okay,
6 o'clock.
what time,
6?
6 o'clock?
Okay.
All right.
Just one more item.
Okay.
You suggested we have a chairman to run the meeting. Are you, does everyone want to select a chairman? How does this want to work? How do you want to do it?
Should we wait till we have the other board members?
It's up to you.
I'm just an alternate.
You're looking at me.
I-
I don't mind running it, I mean.
I just think it's easier. It's a select board
They're
subcommittee.
kind of driving it, yeah.
And you're at the
Okay,
select
I didn't know if you
board.
wanted them to vote, or, you know, you
Oh.
recommended that, so.
Might be easy.
Is
that all right if I do
You're
that?
in charge of this.
Yeah,
Okay,
yep, this
Yeah.
came
Look at
down
that, we've
from the
all figured it
heavens
out,
and-
it's gonna
That-
be you.
all right.
That way you can
Yeah.
report
It was an easy
She
decision.
knew.
It was easy for us to figure out that
knew.
it should be you.
Just want to make sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it makes
And if I'm not here, Steve Gannon will be here, right?
Yeah.
He's my alternate.
So he can run it
So
too.
he can run it.
Yep.
Is that all right with everybody?
Mhm.
All right.
Yep.
Let's see, so, requests for additional items or other business. Does anybody have any other business? I saw yawning. No.
Sorry. I'm sorry. I get a lot of fresh air during the
I
day.
have just kind of a closing thought.
Sure.
Because I've been in a lot of these things, a lot of military planning, base planning and stuff, and so over my experience, and I think we've established that here, but just kind of to summarize that, these committees are very successful if we stay focused on what the issue is and we not trying to solve it so quickly. I think if we just kind of keep each other in check, like, hey, that's a great solution. What we want, we need to define, I'll call it the problem, and then and then start working the solutions. If the solutions start coming in too early, and then I find it to be a tremendous waste of a lot of people's time running down rabbit holes. So
I agree.
I know sometimes it seems it's taking too long or whatever we want to get, but just we keep that main focus on what's the issue, what's the problem, what do we want to be,
Yep.
and not let solutions creep in too quick. I mean, we'll get there.
I agree.
So I just, you know.
Yeah, we'll worry about reality after.
Yeah,
Let's
well,
just-
when you said budget
one
committee,
more.
like, oh, the budget committee always comes in and kills everything off, all great ideas, because we can never afford anything. You know, I'm saying this in
Yeah.
generalities. And so what happens is you get, so no, let's find out what it is, and then we all work together to figure out how to get there.
Like,
I like that mission statement.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I like that's a great mission statement.
I think to Kim's point, once we all know for sure, because we all know different areas, right? Once we all know what the current plan is, so that you got to know that front and back,
Right.
and then we develop, because it doesn't matter what any of us really think. Well, you folks more than me, because you're residents, but then we start our outreach and our survey, right? Because until we find out what the residents want, we can't really put
Right, and
together
that's-
any
and that's that
solutions
focus
for
on-
anything, because we don't know.
And that was what
What's our goals and
beautification did.
objectives,
It
and
was
it's gonna
like,
take
this is
us
what
time to
people
get
wanted.
there.
This is what people wanted. This was
Yeah.
the top thing people wanted. We attacked that, succeeded at that,
Right.
went on to the next thing.
Yeah.
So I think that if we make it like that, you know, where we just say, what do you want the most? And then figure out how to get there.
Right.
And tell them we really want their feedback. We want their conversation, right?
Yeah, I'd like to hear from
We
more than
value
hundred and fifty
that. I
people.
agree.
Yeah, I mean,
It's
none
their
of us
time.
here, none of us here wanna do this in a bubble
No,
or a
it's their
vacuum.
time.
No. And I don't want us to do this, spend a lot of time and effort on it, only to find out that by the time we actually get a result from the actual people that live here, is that those 150 people that we were talking to aren't the 150 people that really wanted something else. You know, I mean, it's like, we really, I don't wanna do all this work and then find out we were 100% wrong. We were going in the wrong direction and biting ourselves.
But if the more involvement we have now, by the time it does get to warrant article, if it does.
Right, that's what I'm
they already
saying.
have buy-in,
Where that
right?
happens
They're part
is
of-
when you start trying to solve it before you've actually got to what the actual problem is.
They-
And then you say, and then you, that wasted effort is you got, oh, that wasn't right. Well, because we shot off trying to solve it and we hadn't defined it yet.
All right, so next agenda items, really just to do some reading on those chapters, if you can. Definitely the one that's about the current economic.
That's number
way we're doing
6.
things today, and all our zoning is around that. Does anybody else have, anything else they want to add for the next agenda item, which is, I guess, 5 weeks from now, right?
We can email you with ideas through the
Sure,
month as
why
well.
not? We'll start to gather things, right?
So
Maybe
I
go
have,
to
I know I
portal,
have
not
to
a
be
portal, but,
careful,
you know,
I'm
get
like a
on
big includer, but when you're on these boards, you're not supposed to, like, I sent out something to everybody and Kim was like quick to say, once
Oh,
you do that,
Well, we'll
you've got a
Yeah.
quorum.
Send
So
it
we
to
have
you,
to be careful
so
how
we
we
all share
talk.
It's up to you. If you'd
Yeah.
if you'd like it, I'll put it, I'll
I think,
keep
yeah,
on.
we're a committee, so why don't we
I'll
send it
keep-
to Kim, and then she can get it to everybody. You want to do it
Perfect.
like that?
If that works out
Does that
okay,
work for
then
you?
Yeah,
Okay.
one person sends it, and,
then
yeah.
I don't make a mistake.
Yeah, I know, 91.
That's just- I just
91A
forget.
is
We
the
all
worst thing in
I
the
just,
whole world.
I just
I have the same thing
forget.
happen to
I'm
me.
looking
Hey, what
for
about
that.
that gas station that was
Right,
gonna, I go,
The Litchfield Drive-In.
oh, we saw
By
it.
everybody.
Yeah, you did your little part of it and now it's moved away.
I have no idea where
Now
it
it's gone
is.
and now it's going to
Sit here,
planning.
I'm gonna put
And it's like, right, when they leave,
No,
once it
was
leaves
an actual
conservation and then
drive-in,
it goes
like
to
was
you
beyond
guys.
rated R.
I don't know what happens
Yeah.
next to it until I
Like,
see
the
start
logo
seeing
had like a
stuff.
woman like
Or you
outlined in
complain.
black, like.
And I start asking questions.
Does anybody
like
else have
that.
anything they want for the next item?
I don't know why my dad
All
was-
right, do you guys want to adjourn? Do we need a motion? Are we actually taking
Motion to
motions on
adjourn.
this?
Yes.
Okay.
I will second that motion.
There we go.
Motion to adjourn, Jeremy?
Second, I second.
All
Good.
in favor?
I,
Aye.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very
All
much
right.
for joining.
I got my
Look
homework.
forward to talking with as many
That
as
was
we
the
can.
house that